Very happy to bring on to the podcast now. Max Goodman covers the Yankees for Sports Illustrated. He's in Tampa. He's been there the entire time. Max, how's it going?
It's good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Is this your first spring training that you covered with the Yankees, where you're in person? Because I know the last couple have been remote.
Right, it's my third spring. Um, the first one in 2020, I got like a week and a half, two
That's
weeks in the
true. That's right.
clubhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then everything shut down. Last spring I was here, but we were, outside. We didn't have clubhouse access. We didn't have field access at that point, if I remember correctly. But this spring has been awesome. We've gotten a lot of access, finally introducing myself to a lot of players that we've been on Zoom with, but I haven't actually met in person. So starting to have those conversations in the clubhouse and learning more about these guys because they're, humans too,
Hmm.
beyond just being athletes. And yeah, it should be a big year for this team. Whether it ends up being good or bad, there's high expectations and a lot of star power, a lot of talent. So plenty to talk about.
They're getting some heat. I think a lot of people, not just fans, but also media critics, have not written good positive things about their offseason moves. Which I've as people who listen to the show know, I don't hate their offseason moves. I actually appreciate that they're making some changes, some big changes to the roster because I think they were needed. Time will tell if those were the right moves or not. Like, I don't think we can call that on March 29th. But what's your opinion? How do you think the offseason went for the Yankees?
Yeah, there was the someone at ESPN posted their like off-season review, and it was a D plus.
Mm-hmm. D's
I
get
think
degrees,
that's
though.
yeah, for sure. Um, I think that's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
Um, they got better. Maybe it wasn't as much better as it could have been if they ended up signing, a Correa, a Story, trade for an Olson, sign a Freeman. I think that for financial reasons and maybe just not the perfect fit in negotiations and other teams swooping in, they didn't end up making those deals. So they got better defensively for sure. The infield is a lot better on defense with Kiner Falefa at short and Donaldson at third. Rortvet, we haven't seen him play yet, but he's supposedly solid behind the plate. So moving on from Gary Sanchez isn't the worst thing in more ways than one, but they really didn't touch their pitching staff. So
Mm.
that depth is going to be tested early on. Granted, everyone I've talked to down here has praised the organizational depth that they have in their pitching staff. Maybe some pitchers that fans haven't even really seen yet, unless they've been watching Double A and Triple A games these last few years. So it'll really come down to, can this team stay healthy and can they avoid the inconsistencies they had last year? Because the talent is there. I mean, the payroll is so high, the star power is there, like I said earlier. If everything goes according to plan, there's no reason why this team can't contend for a World Series. But as we've seen in recent years, certain guys get hurt, certain players underperform, and the perfect mix of that results in a wild card appearance, and then all bets are off. So I think that fans should be optimistic, but maybe a little cautiously optimistic because it's hard to count on this group when they haven't put it together these last few years, this core that they've had. But the talent is there. I think that they could be in a far worse position at this point in the year. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would give them in terms of a
Yeah,
letter grade,
grade them.
but
Give them a
oh
grade.
geez, I don't know. Let's say like a B minus maybe. Like it
Okay.
could have been a lot better, but they did still improve.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'll probably talk about this, but if they weren't in the best division in the sport,
Yeah.
it would be a lot easier to count on them to go deep into the postseason. But they could very well finish fourth, and I don't think that that's like a bold take. But they could also win the division too. So
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually would have also given them a B minus, and I think I don't. I'm not even. I'm certainly disappointed they missed out on Freddie Freeman. I'm a huge Freddie Freeman fan. I think he would have been just perfect for this lineup, perfect for this team. But it's not like Anthony Rizzo is a bad player. I never saw once they didn't sign Seager. I never saw them signing Correa or Story or any of the other right-handed big shortstops for that we're going to ask for 100, $200 million. So I'm not even like necessarily disappointed that didn't happen. I would have loved to see them get another arm that you can slot into the middle of the rotation because we kind of did the math on last week's episode. it's like, okay, you can count on Cole for 30 starts, and hopefully Montgomery is fully healthy. Like he hasn't had any health issues, so that's another 30 starts. So you got to get 100 starts out of Severino, who's pitched a handful of games since 2019. Taillon, who's had many injuries and coming back from yet another injury. Nestor Cortez, who is completely unproven, and then all the depth pieces: Michael King, Clark Schmidt, Devi Garcia, Luis Hill, etc. That's a lot of question marks to get 100 games out of. So I probably would bump them up to like a B plus A minus if they got another secure starting pitcher.
Sure. Well, I think that's why there are the rumors that they're still in on, Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea. I mean, we'll see if that ends up happening. Like I was in the hallway today, and Brian Cashman was walking down the hall with me, and I was like, "You keeping busy?" And he was like, "Yeah, well, week and a half to go until the season or whatever." I didn't get any substance there, but
Did
I
you hear
do
the
think
quote
that
he gave to MLB Network today?
I didn't actually. I saw him doing that interview, but I
Yeah.
didn't hear what he said.
So this is like Cashman has these Cashmanisms. I'm sure you've picked up on this. He said we've kept our powder dry for one more move, whatever the f that means.
Our powder dry. I've never heard that one.
Yeah.
I can see it. I think that you could even make an argument that they have this like surplus of infielders that I wonder if Gleyber Torres could be moved. I'm just totally hypothetical here. The fact that DJ LeMahieu is like on their bench right now heading into the season, in a way, it doesn't make sense to a certain extent. You want to have the depth, and having 9 position players for 8 spots is a good thing, especially with the injuries that they've had. But they do have the organizational depth at shortstop. They have a ton of really talented shortstop prospects to make a move if you want to have one of them be expendable and go out and get a starting pitcher. But yeah, I thought that, Carlos Rodon would have been like up their alley in terms of high upside, past with injuries, and high profile name. A lefty would have done well in the rotation as well. But you were naming some names. I mean, the upside of this rotation as a whole is the ceiling is the roof, right? I mean, the younger guys could really have an impact right away because we've only seen Garrett Cole make one spring start and he only pitched however many innings it was. Like these guys are going to need to have an impact, the expanded roster and the other, not as impactful guys in the bullpen, like the last, what would it be, 12 and 13 or 14, 15 on your pitching staff. They're going to have an impact because not everybody's built up.
Yeah.
So you could be seeing Clark Schmidt early. You could be seeing JP Sears and Ron Marinaccio, like new guys, new faces that have proven themselves in the minor leagues, but haven't proven themselves in the majors yet. Obviously, the last 2 names haven't even debuted yet. So the pressure's on for all those guys to step up and the next man up mentality. But the downsides are if they don't end up panning out, then you're screwed with what you have. You got to make a couple trades at the trade deadline, but it might be too late at that point.
But yeah, maybe that's their plan. Let's see where we are in July and make our move
Right.
then. I mean, with the expanded playoffs, even if they do finish 4th in the division, I don't expect them to be so far out of the playoffs that they're not going to be buyers at the trade deadline. That would shock me. Finishing 4th in division wouldn't necessarily shock me, but them being so far out of a wild card spot would shock me. And the reality is you don't need all of those depth pieces to hit. You kind of just need 1 or maybe 2 to hit. It's just like prospects. You're throwing darts at the wall. You're trying to hit the lottery, and then you're in a good spot. But I mean, the news today that Severino felt some soreness doesn't seem too serious, but I guess we'll know more after his next outing. So it's like these sorts of things. Like you could see how the snowball could roll downhill in a bad way very quickly with this staff.
Definitely. I'm not too concerned yet about Severino, but I think we'll learn more on Wednesday when he throws the bullpen. I don't know, maybe there's some strategy in this where the Yankees were going to play the Blue Jays, and you don't want Severino to face a divisional opponent, or it really is soreness and he's not 100%.
We doing strategy in the first week of the season already. It's like, aren't you just trying to get your guys on the right pitch path for the season?
Yeah.
Not talking about strategy. Like that's I think that would be overblown.
Right. But I mean, these spring starts are important. I mean, Severino has a 17 ERA right now. Like he has to find his
It's not good.
command and figure things out because he has only pitched what is it, like 18 appearances in the last 3 years or something like that off the top of my head.
Yep.
Um, he's got to get acclimated to being back in the rotation and pitching every fifth day. Because even if he does that, he still has to produce. And for him to be the ace that he was, and in this case, he would be a number two for them. He still has a long way to go. Like, you don't know exactly what you're going to get from him this year. And I think that Montgomery will take another step forward. But even if he pitches to his complete potential, is he really a true 1B in a rotation? I don't know. I mean, he probably would say so, and everyone in the organization maybe thinks that that's his upside. But you might want to, in a hypothetical world, get a real two for the rotation behind Cole. And who knows what you're going to get with Cole too. I mean, there were times where he wasn't the ace that they're paying $324 million to last year. So the question marks are real. You don't know what you're going to get with Cortez. Tyone coming back from the injuries, like you said, and if they put Heel in there, can he really replicate what he did last year? So uh, question marks galore, I guess we'll say, heading into opening day.
Yeah, that's kind of the Garrett Cole sticky stuff is kind of the elephant in the room. No one thinks he's gonna stink this year, but what if he's not the one or first or second best pitcher on the planet anymore, and he's just really really good, which I think he is still really really good. But he instead of being 7 innings, 1 run every night, it's 6 innings, 2 or 3 runs. That might not matter a ton for the regular season, but if you're in a September playoff push or a wild card game like they were last year, that could make or break the season.
Well, they're banking on what they have, and I think Cashman said something, alluding to that the other day, that they are really happy with the guys that they have internally, and that's part of the reason why they didn't go out of their way and spend an arm and a leg to, address that part of their organization.
Yep.
But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out. I mean, it's certainly a risk, and you're counting on the guys that you have that maybe in some cases have shown flashes, but putting it together is a whole nother conversation.
The big move obviously was Donaldson IKF, and Donaldson being added to the clubhouse is interesting. Just a huge personality, had the confrontations with Garrett Cole last year. And then there was a kind of a Yankee Twitter viral moment that went around the other day of him just sort of agitating Garrett Cole in the dugout. How do you think Donaldson has fit in the clubhouse so far, and how do you see this playing out this year?
From my perspective, I think he's fit in well, just in terms of when we're standing around in there, waiting to interview certain people or just having the open clubhouse. Whenever he walks by, it seems like he's saying hi to somebody, or he's sitting at his locker and people are gravitating towards him. Something very specific, which doesn't really give you the whole, what's the word I'm looking for? Is the whole grasp of the situation. It's very specific. We were talking to Kyle Higashioka because he hit his fourth home run today, and he credited his total swing change. Like in 2015, he changed his swing and started to break out in the minors. That was the year that Donaldson won MVP. So he was talking about how he modeled his swing and not to the extent that Donaldson has, the coil and the leg kick, but a very similar approach. He credited that to what he saw watching highlights of Donaldson. And so now, all these years later, he's been able to pick Donaldson's brain in person. And I think, maybe that's a little overblown because it's one player, but that's a testament to the kind of impact that he can have in the clubhouse, that he is a former MVP and he does bring that fire, what was it that Aaron Hicks said? The FU, he brings that to a locker room. And I mean, it's there. He's made some plays in the field. He's hit a couple home runs so far. If he can stay healthy and play a full season, there's no reason why he can't be much more impactful than a Gio Urshela would have been. He's not going to win an MVP, but he's going to hit, and he can play above average defense and have that, positive presence in the clubhouse, because it doesn't look like they're going to bring Gardner back. I mean, they need the veteran who's been through it and is going to go out and, say something to a guy on another team if there's a brawl or some sort of confrontation. Like, he's going to be that guy. And that's only positive unless things start to unravel. But it seems like they've, squashed the beef with Garrett Cole and all that stuff. So I think it's only been positive so far.
Yeah, from everything that we've heard throughout Donaldson's career, he's liked by his teammates. If he's on your side, you're good with him. And I think
Right.
this Yankees clubhouse needed a little bit of FU attitude. I think the last couple of years, maybe just a little complacent, a little too comfortable. They sort of acted like their shit didn't stink when in reality they needed to play their ass off just to make the playoffs in two years, 2020 and 2021. But they still had this like air of, oh, we belong here. We're so close, and it's just like that rubbed me the wrong way. So if Donaldson's gonna bring a little fu attitude to the clubhouse, I don't think that's a bad thing.
It also, thinking through it right now, it's kind of replacing Luke Voigt, but someone who's even more vocal in that way. Like, remember what Voigt said last spring when the Domingo Herman stuff was being discussed when he was returning to the clubhouse, and Voigt was like, "Yeah, he's on thin ice. Like,
Yeah.
he needs to get his stuff together off the field." It's like it takes a certain individual and teammate to actually say those kinds of things. And we weren't in the clubhouse these last few years, but that's what I'd imagine Voigt was like as he started to find himself. Um, and yeah, I mean, if Donaldson is also producing, he's going to be
Right.
a leader with the way that he's playing in between the lines as well. So that's huge.
Yeah, the infield is interesting because I certainly think they've upgraded the infield. Definitely, the left side infield defense is light years better than it was last year. So that's a positive. Moving Glaber out of shortstop, I think, is a positive right there. He's not going to be a basket case, which is a good thing. I do think you almost have to keep DJ, or trading Glaber. I think would be risky because of the injury concerns with Donaldson. That you know, I don't know if everyone stays healthy. I don't know when DJ is going to play. It might not be enough, but banking that Donaldson's going to stay healthy the whole year and trading away Glaber is a pretty big risk that they would be taking.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
The fact that you have five infielders for four spots, but I worry, as you know, putting myself in a Yankees fan's shoes, you're sitting each guy more than they should. Let's say everybody's healthy. You have to sit certain players, and maybe Donaldson's starting to find himself, but okay, you're going to give him a day and put LeMahieu at third so you can sub or keep DJ keep Glaber at second. Even just walking through it, there's so many different possibilities and names that you can fill in different spots. But the versatility is a good thing. Uh, Someone's going to get hurt at some point, so it's good to
Always.
have.
Always happens.
Exactly. And I think that Marwin Gonzalez will probably be the one that makes it on the bench, and he can play every position in the infield as well.
Yep.
He's not as fast as what Tyler Wade is, but that's the kind of player that he would be in terms of his playing different positions, and the offensive upside is better too. So, you know, Rizzo's going to play good defense at first. You talked about the left side, but Rizzo's going to have an impact at first. And it seems like Glaber's figuring things out offensively, and maybe not being at short is going to open up some doors for him. But, you know, we'll see. We'll see what they do in the regular season.
A huge amount of what happens in the infield and how much time DJ gets and Donaldson maybe gets at DH depends on what happens in the outfield and how much outfield Stanton plays. Because if Stanton can
Right.
play the outfield for 80 games, let's call it, then you really open yourself up to getting Donaldson a lot of DH days, and you can put DJ at third base on those days, and Glaber still is essentially is a 6 day a week second baseman, and then you're totally fine there. But if their plan, do you have any indication of what their plan is with Stanton and the rest of the outfield alignment? Because, man, Stanton was an absolute force in the second half of last year. And, I mean, he says it's because he was playing the outfield and he felt more involved in the game and everything. So I'm going to listen to him and, yeah, go out there and have a 150 WRC plus for me, please.
Well, it certainly seems like he's going to be out there at least a couple times a week. I don't think that it's been said specifically what the plan is numerically. Like, I think it'll depend on how he's feeling as the season progresses. But what they've been doing this spring in terms of outfield alignment says a lot. I mean, they had Judge in center today, Tuesday, with Hicks in left.
Yeah, that was
And
interesting.
Boone mentioned to us today that Gallo's going to be in center, I think, on Friday,
Finally.
with potentially Hicks in left. I don't know. I mean, the fact that Gallo is such a plus defender, you can put him anywhere. But the reasoning behind it, and that's what Boone was explaining, is left field, left center is very difficult at Yankee Stadium compared
Yeah.
to a lot less ground to cover in right. So if you're going to put Stanton in the outfield, you're not going to put him in left at Yankee Stadium. So
Yeah.
you can play right, and you don't want to put Judge in left and keep Hicks in center. So that's why you would put Judge in center. So there are a lot of moving parts. I think that, and this has been the case in past years as well. The lineups are just going to be different day to day. And
Yeah.
there's even the ability to use like 5 different guys in the leadoff spot too. I mean, Donaldson has been hitting leadoff this spring. You could put Hicks, Gallo with their plate discipline, getting on base. Judge could be there. Rizzo has had success there. I mean,
Obviously,
if
LeMahieu when LeMahieu's playing.
obviously DJ,
Like,
and hey, if
yeah.
Glaber's playing well, you could put him there too. I mean, pretty much anybody, and that's modern baseball. You can put a lot of different guys
Yeah.
that maybe don't profile as leadoff hitters, but I think that you're going to see a versatile team really use that and utilize that as a resource, especially early on, because you
That's
don't
good.
want, yeah,
But I mean, that's huge because think about how one-dimensional this team has been the last couple of years,
right,
and I'm not just talking about where you could bat guys in the lineup, but just they could only score in one way. So last year, I think they finished 8th in on-base percentage, but like 17th or 18th in runs scored. It's because they didn't get enough hits. So you're adding guys with more contact, less strikeouts that can bat up and down the lineup. Some left-handed hitters. I think the lineup is overblown. Who's batting first? Who's batting second? Who's batting third? Like ultimately, it's not like a gigantic difference over the course of a season. Obviously, you're not going to bat Judge 8th. Like that's just silly. But if he's hitting first, second, or third, it's not like going to make a massive difference. So just adding some more diversity to this lineup is going to be a positive thing.
sure. I think that the analogy that's been used a couple of times this spring is they're a lot less station to station.
Right.
At least they profile as that this year, where you saw it today, Tuesday. Connor Falefa went the other way on a hit and run and then stole second base a couple pitches later. You have that in your 6 or 7 spot in the order, maybe 8 or 9 even. And the Yankees have always had strength in the bottom of their order. I mean, it's a stacked offense when everybody's, you know, playing to their potential. But again, they got to stay healthy because if you're starting to have Marwin Gonzalez start 5, 6 times a week, I mean, it's not the same. So if everyone stays healthy and they can figure out how to have everyone moving in different parts and still hitting their rhythm and not cramping up because they've been sitting for a couple days at a time, that's going to be the perfect scenario. But to do that for 162 games is impossible. I mean, they're going to have to face adversity at some point, and you're probably going to see them call up an Oswaldo Cabrera to play in a utility role, or who they're going to use in the outfield. What kind of role does Miguel Andujar have if he's still on the team at some point? So,
Poor
so
Miguel
many moving
Andujar.
parts. Yeah.
Yeah, Andujar just obviously for many reasons bad luck with the injury in early 2019 and was never able to get back. I don't know. You can't play him in the infield, so you're gonna stick him in left field a couple times, like I guess. But
He hasn't even really. I haven't heard his name that many times this spring.
no,
He can play first and third, like he can play it. He's not, a defensive stalwart, and he's capable of being in left too. So there is some versatility, but I wouldn't put him on my opening day roster where things stand right now. I think that I mentioned Gonzalez earlier, and then I think that LaCastro gets the spot in the outfield
yeah.
because he's on the 40 man. As much as Inciarte's actually been playing well and he's come up a few times, I don't know if you move it so you have 2 non-roster guys on your bench because Marwin's obviously not on the roster either.
Oh,
So there are moving parts there.
so with the 28-man roster to start the season, they can be non. No, you have to
You
add
still
them to
have
the
to,
40-man. Yeah,
yeah,
you have to add them
yeah,
to
yeah.
the 40-man because something's going to have to be done with Brantley for if Rotvert can't go for opening day,
Right.
which it seems like he's not going to be ready for opening day.
I think he
We're
won't
10
be
days
ready.
away. You think
Right.
he will or won't?
Won't.
Yeah, we're 10 days away from opening day, so it's like he hasn't even played in spring yet. He's not going to be ready for opening day, so they're
Right.
going
I
to have to
mean,
make a move.
Boone hasn't ruled it out, but the
Yeah,
latest is that he's hitting off a tee.
yeah,
He hasn't seen live pitching yet, and he's even if he was healthy. I mean, learning an entirely new pitching staff in 2.5 weeks or whatever it was going to be, that's a challenge. I mean,
sure.
Higashioka was going to be the primary guy regardless, and he's obviously been playing well. The pitching staff really trusts him, which is good. You have something reliable there. But I think it'll be probably Brantley. Max McDowell has come up a few times, and then David Freitas is the other non-roster guy. But they're going to have to make room on the 40 man for at least the catcher, probably Marwin Gonzalez too. That's why I don't think they would have a non-roster guy that's also from the outfield.
So Is Higgy going to be like a 5 day a week catcher, or is it really going to be more of a platoon?
I think the plan, if Rortvedt is healthy, it'll be more of a platoon. But if Higashioka's hitting the way he is right now, I mean, there's no reason not to have him out there. I
That's the thing about Higgy. He
right.
goes into these streaks where he hits like 5 home runs in 10 games and then nothing for a month and a half.
That was Meredith Marakovitz asked Boone in his office today, like, what gives you the notion that he's actually going to be consistent? Because we've seen the spurts that he's been really good offensively, but he hasn't put it together for a full season. So they're banking on that. That's his upside. I think that you're going to get far better defense than what a Gary Sanchez would have been
Oh
doing
yeah.
if you look at the advanced numbers and just the eye test. And that's what has been said about Rortvedt as well. So if both of them are healthy, you're never subtracting on defense, regardless of who's back there.
Which is good.
And if you have Rortvedt much stronger against right-handed pitch, I haven't looked at their splits, but I guess that's how it would be. Um, Obviously, Higashioka is going to catch when Cole is pitching too. So it's the same conversation as every other position. I mean, you got to figure out who is being penciled in where on a day-to-day basis. So I don't know if that'll backfire that there isn't, you know, Jeter's hitting second and playing short today.
Yeah.
Like there isn't as many set in stone spots in this order. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing too.
But also, like, let's be real. If we're complaining about not getting offense out of the catching position, then something else isn't going right on this team.
Right.
The rest of the lineup 1 through 8 should be enough offense where that you can have a hole at the 9 spot as long as the catching is good defensively.
Yeah, catching is hard to find in today's MLB. I mean, you go to different teams across the league, finding your Yadier Molina franchise catcher that's going to be there and produce for a decade. I mean, it's very hard to find these days.
There's 2 or 3 a decade that come along. It's like
Right.
if we actually talked to Josh Bro a few weeks back, and we were just talking about like the count on one hand the catchers that have like the really like franchise catchers over the last 20 years. It's like
Right.
Mauer, it's Molina, it's Posada. It's like
Posey.
it's just like you can count on one hand. So we thought we had it in Sanchez and didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what was I going to say? People were calling for the Yankees to go out and get a catcher. I mean, I know Wilson Contreras is potentially available, but you know, who else is out there?
Yeah.
And why would a team want to give up a solid catcher? I mean, obviously every situation is different, but if you have a guy like a Contreras and the Cubs are all of a sudden a little better than I think a lot of us thought they were going to be this year, why would you give somebody up unless it's a contractual thing or a bad fit? It would take a lot to get a quality defensive and offensive catcher. Like
Right.
they're very hard to find. So a team's not just going to give them up for, you know, a minor league pitcher. Like it's going to take a top prospect to get them. And clearly they were hesitant to give up their top prospects in the sense that they didn't trade for Olson and they didn't make certain moves over the course of the offseason.
All right. So what do you think is going to happen with Judge's contract before opening day? Do we get a deal done?
I think they do. I don't know. I just I don't see him playing for another team. I think both parties really want to get it done, and both parties don't necessarily want to deal with this during the year.
Yeah.
Um, the Yankees didn't make the big splashy moves that would have been a hindrance to paying Judge the money that he's earned and he deserves. So it could happen any day now. I just I can't see it not happening if he enters free agency. Like that just doesn't seem like it's going to happen, where he would potentially walk and go somewhere else. I don't see them trading him. I mean, like I think that the very obvious solution here is to just give him a really big contract. But the question is, how high do the Yankees want to go? Because they are being very cognizant of their payroll as high as it is. Um, and the fact that they're paying Hicks, LeMahieu, Britton, Chapman, like all those
Yeah.
contracts adding up, not to mention Cole and Stanton. And some guys are making a lot of money. And
But they are
they
getting a
have
lot
to,
of money off the books after next year. And so if you're
Right.
thinking about, okay, obviously you'd be extending Judge. He's already going to be making about 20 million this year because of arbitration. So his contract would start next year. That's the payroll is going to be out of control next year, but you're kind of, I think they're losing like $90 million or something like that after that. So that's, I mean, between Britton and Chapman and some other guys coming off the books, it's a lot coming off the books at the end of next year.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have like a guess in terms of the figures. I haven't really dove into that yet, but the season that he put together last year, I think that he silenced a lot of the critics saying that he can't stay on the field. I mean, he was an MVP caliber player last year. There's no doubt about that. So the presence that he has on the team also, I mean, is the closest thing they've had to a captain in a long time. So I don't see them not bringing him back. It's just a matter of them figuring things out before opening day, which is very, it's on the horizon at this point because he doesn't want it to be a distraction. And
It
I,
will
I,
be. It will be.
yeah,
I really think it will be. If this goes into the season and then it'll be a distraction around the trade deadline, certainly a distraction towards the end of the season, what's happening with your contract. And if he does hit free agency, that's bad. That's a bad sign for them re-signing him because if they're not going to do it now, what's going to change between now and September or now and October? So
right.
I feel like if it doesn't happen before opening day, it might not happen.
And other teams might be able to give him more money, or he may not feel like he wants to return if he's treated poorly in the next 6 months or whatever it ends up being. I mean, he's made it clear that he wants to be a Yankee for life. He said that probably like 10 times in the last couple of weeks. And I believe him. I think all of us do. But, players want to get their money and they want to play in a place where they're wanted and be in a situation where they can win a World Series. And sometimes it doesn't work out where the franchise player leaves. I mean, it's definitely on the table. It's not impossible. I just still can't envision it.
Do you think Stanton being under contract through 2028? I mean, obviously that impacts things monetarily, but also positionally it impacts things because they can't both DH in 2026.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how many more years he'll be able to play outfield. I
Right.
mean, he's still trying to figure it out for this year. So, in the grand scheme of things, his contract, it looks better than the way it was when it happened because that's how much star players are making these days. Like it's actually less than what other big time superstars are making. So in a sense it's a good thing, but also that's what you have to do when you're in sports these days. You got to sign these players until they're 40 years old because that's just what the market is dictating. And that's you have to manage the repercussions of that because you're getting the star player in their prime, but his prime is going to start to dwindle soon. I mean, he's in his early 30s, right? So you got to take advantage of those years, take advantage of Cole's years and Judge's years. That's why they got to start to win. As much as the window is always going to be open for the Yankees because they're the Yankees, this is the final few years of prime time Giancarlo Stanton,
Yep.
prime time Garrett Cole, because you don't know what they're going to look like 5 years from now.
Oh,
And as much
absolutely.
as you want to surround, you know, have Anthony Volpe come up and be the future of the organization, you have the talent to win right now too. So finding the balance between a really solid farm system and some really top ranked prospects versus the potential future Hall of Famers that you have on your roster right now. You don't want to mess up and not get the best of both, and you're stuck in the middle and not winning.
I know all the big outfielders, Mookie Betts, Bryce Harper, Giancarlo Stanton, have all gotten contracts into their late 30s or 40s. I don't see that happening with Judge, though. I don't see the Yankees giving him a 9-year contract that takes him to his age 40 season. I think a 7-year contract is, like, in my mind, the max that they're going to go.
Yeah, I could see 7 year. I maybe you sign him for like a 5 year or something if he's
Well,
willing to do
if,
that. But I
if
don't know
he's,
if he would take
I don't
something
know
like
that he's
that.
willing. I mean, I think he
Yeah,
can. His agent, I don't think, would let him sign a 5-year contract
right.
because he will get at least a 6-year contract from another team. No
Yeah.
doubt, no doubt in my mind.
So maybe it comes down to whether or not the Yankees pony up and give him a seventh year, something like
Yeah.
that. Um, But I don't even know if they've actually started negotiating yet. Clearly, it's going to happen soon.
TikTok.
But
It's like
yeah,
they keep talking about how Steimer said about over a week ago, like, yeah, we're gonna make him an offer next week. Well, we're in that week that he was supposed to get an offer, and for all we know, he has that offer, and he doesn't like the offer, or he will accept
yeah,
that offer. Like it could. I mean, who the hell knows? We could see on Twitter at midnight tonight, Yankees have extended Aaron Judge, because I feel like that's how the
yeah.
news has gone the past month. But I don't know. It just keeps a lot of talk about, yeah, we're gonna do it, but they haven't done it yet.
Definitely. And you said it would be a distraction. I mean, every time he walks into the clubhouse, we all kind of like gravitate towards him to try to get an update. Like we haven't even really talked to him too much
He doesn't
about
give you guys
baseball,
anything.
but it's
Judge
still
doesn't
that's the
say
topic of
anything,
conversation.
though. Of course. But like when you're dealing, you as a reporter, I mean, certain, like, you obviously know which players are going to divulge a little bit more and be a little bit more forthcoming. Judge is one of these guys that just like is basically the no comment master. I mean, what Derek Jeter did for 20 years. How do you approach that? I mean, you have to ask him questions. I understand you have to ask him questions, but it's kind of got to be painful for you, right? Like going up there being like, I know I'm not going to get an answer out of this, but I have to ask it anyway.
I think it just results in a lot of, you know, paraphrased follow-ups and trying to find different ways to ask certain questions. Um, and I mean, I'm only in my third season with the team, right? So I'm not the
You got to work
tenured
your way up
reporter
there.
asking
Yeah.
the first question. So
Yeah.
I've kind of been trying to find my niche with the younger guys and building those relationships this spring. As much as I'd love to do a sit-down interview with Aaron Judge, I mean, he's a hard guy to get, you
Yeah.
know. So that's as a reporter. I mean, I am blessed to be around New York media in that sense because I've learned so much as to how they approach those kinds of scrum interviews and how to ask those hard questions because you might not get that if you're covering a very, very small market team, a team that's not winning, and you're not covering superstars. So, yeah, I mean, he always talks when you're there and you ask for time. I mean, from what I've seen, he's good with the media in that sense, but he's also, you know, blossomed into this top 5 in the league type of superstar. Those guys are always going to be hard to get because they're going about their business every day and they can hit 2 home runs and they don't need to necessarily talk to the media, you know? So that's finding a balance on a day-to-day basis too.
Yeah. Is there a guy in that clubhouse that you feel like you have been able to get that extra level of connection with this spring?
This spring, ooh.
Or over the
Well,
past year or 2 years, whatever.
yeah, the fun story I always tell is my first spring, so 2020. Um, I hadn't really talked to that many people. I'm still just fresh out of school, kind of shy at that point, trying to build my confidence. And I think I had met Higashioka very briefly, shook his hand, and a couple of days later, I was underneath the bullpen area, and he walked out of the pen in his catcher's gear and walked right by me. He was like, "Hey, Max," and walked away. And that was the first time any big leaguer had ever known who I was and
Yeah.
said my name. You know, maybe he doesn't know too much about me, but the fact that he knew who I was and recognized me, that really went a long way. And there are a lot of guys in the clubhouse that even Judge. I mean, they know your name, they say hi to you, and that, for me, from my perspective, goes a long way. But this spring, I did a sit down with Clark Schmidt a couple years ago, so I got to catch up with him the other day because of his injuries and the stuff that he's dealt with, not being able to distance himself from the prospect role because he's getting older. I mean, he's closer to 30 than he is
I
20
know.
at this point.
It's crazy.
Um, and I've talked to a lot of the different guys. I mean, we have access a couple hours a day, and as soon as you're in there, as much as I check Twitter sometimes and talk to the other reporters, like you're always trying to monitor and see if you can catch a couple minutes with somebody, whether it's a non-roster catcher like Max McDowell or Garrett Cole, and you try to say hi really quick. So those are the challenges for me, and obviously those guys are busy too. But it's really nice to be back in there and just have the opportunity to build those relationships.
Right. Impossible to do over Zoom. I can't even imagine. So it's good. Yeah, definitely good that you're back in there. And thank you so much for the time. Very fun to talk to you, and love to catch up over the course of the season.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Anytime. Appreciate it.